Hello and welcome to ATG 4950. After learning about capacity management and the mass production, we are going to learn about suppliers, supplier selection, and the whole supply chain. The supply chain is the network of organizations, people, activities, information, and resources involved in moving a product or service from a supplier all the way to the end user. Or in short, we can say that it's the group of companies that work together to produce a product all the way from raw material to end user. To manage the supply chain, we need to integrate the activities needed to produce material and services, to transform the raw material or to transform them from raw material to goods and services that will be provided for the end user or the customer. Managing the supply chain will create a successful chain that can compete with other similar supply chains. To manage the supply chain, we need to determine who are the vendors that I will be using for transportation, how the credit and cash transfers will work within the supply chain, the suppliers that will provide the raw material for the item that is being produced, the distributors that will sell or distribute the item after being produced, the accounts payable and receivable that needs to be set up to receive money from customers and pay money to suppliers. In addition, we need to know the company that, or we have determined if the company would have a warehouse to keep the inventory or not, how the supply chain can fulfill the orders, and how sharing customers, forecasting, and production information will work between the different partners of the supply chain. This is a diagram that shows the supply chain for a beer company, an example of a supply chain and how it works. So as you can see, the raw material starts from tier 3 suppliers that supplies the basic raw material to tier 2, which supplies more processed material to tier 1, which makes either bottles or cans. So tier 1 suppliers will supply the brewer with cans and bottles. The crops needed for the beer will be sent from the farms to storage facilities. Then it will be shipped to the brewer, and the brewer will process the raw material and either can bottle it or can it, then send the material to the distributor. Distributors will send it for retail stores to be sold for the end or to the end user. In a global environment, the supply chain must be able to react to the sudden changes that might happen in the market, such as the bankruptcy of a supplier, where parts needed are not available anymore, or distribution company went out of business. Other global problems might be based on political issues such as closing the airport or the seaport because of diplomatic relations or war with the country. Not only that, but also their currency might go down. A strong supply chain will be able to find other alternatives to avoid the extreme changes in the market and recover as fast as possible. Having the cutting-edge technology supports the success of a supply chain through effective communications and scheduling capabilities. To create a flexible supply chain, the enterprise should hire local specialists who can handle duties, freight, customs, and political issues in that country. Those people know the culture, the traditions, the code of ethics, and political situation in their own countries and how to deal with them. The primary selection criteria for supplier can be identified based on the organization's strategy. And there are three main organization strategies: either low-cost strategy, response strategy, and differentiation strategy. When we say low-cost strategy, means the organization follow a low-cost strategy, such as Walmart, where they provide their customers with the lowest price in the market for certain items. For the response strategy, the supplier or the company, the organization select to respond fast to the market by providing the need as soon as possible. For the differentiation strategy, it's a strategy that's being followed by the organization to differentiate itself or its products from other competitors and other companies. For the selection criteria or the primary selection criteria here in this example, if it's a low-cost organization or strategy for the organization, they will select a supplier with the lowest cost. If they are following a response strategy, then they will select a supplier that will be used based on capacity, speed, and flexibility. While for the differentiation strategy, it will be based on the supplier that has the most skills in product development. One of the decisions that the organization will face once they are producing or developing a product, and the same for you in this case, since you are developing a product, you will take a decision on the make or buy. Should I buy it or should I make it? If it's available in the market, you don't need to reinvent the wheel unless it's very expensive. If you can make it cheaper, then that will be the reason for you to make it with better quality, cheaper, and that's why you make it. While if it's available in the market with a good price and good quality, then you will buy it. Actually, we can list 11 reasons for you to make it in-house if you'd like, and those are the maintain core competence, lower production cost, unsuitable suppliers, to assure adequate supply because you have it internally, so actually you can make it and you can supply yourself with the material as needed. Utilize surplus labor or facilities if you have extra labor hours that you are not using, or a space in the facility that you are not using. Obtain desired quality. Certain quality, it's controlled by you internally, so you can decide what kind of quality would you like to provide. You can also remove supplier collision or in this case, you don't want the supplier to control whatever your decision will be. And obtain unique item that would entail prohibitive commitment for a supplier. Then protect personnel from layoff, because you have the extra time for them or extra labor hours you don't want to waste, or you don't want to actually fire them. Instead of firing them or laying off those employees, you can give them those hours to make the product that you need. Protect proprietary design or quality. You don't want the maker, if it's an external company, to know about the product that you are making, and then the design will go to your competitor. And then increase or maintain size of the company. But there are also other reasons for you to buy from outside. Um, Maybe it frees management to deal with its core competencies instead of dealing with the new issue, which is the making issue. It will lower acquisition cost. It will preserve supplier commitment. It will obtain technical or management ability. It's inadequate. It has inadequate capacity. Reduce inventory costs. Ensure alternative sources. Inadequate managerial or technical resources. Um, uh, uh, in addition to the reciprocity, and item is protected by a patent or trade secret that no one actually can take it or uh, take the idea or the design from you. If you decide to buy from outside, from another person, that's what we call outsourcing. So you are bringing the items from outside. The transferring the traditional internal activities and resources of a firm to outside vendors um, is called outsourcing. Lots of organizations outsource their activities not only to outside vendors but might be to vendors outside the country seeking for efficiency, specialization, and most of the time cheap labor. Although that might save the organization a lot of money on the short run, but might affect the company or the country's economy on the long run. Choosing to outsource should be based on an extensive study for the market. Some of the product of or the services that the firm outsource are information technology, accounting, legal, logistics, and production. When dealing with a huge chain of firms, there are lots of opportunities for unethical behavior and temptations are high. To define acceptable behavior, many companies have strict rules and codes of conduct. The Institute of Supply Chain Management has developed a detailed set of principles and standards for ethical behavior. In general, the principles and standards for ethical supply chain management or uh, supply chain conduct can be summarized in three lines: loyalty to your organization, justice to those with whom you deal, and faith in your profession. In more details, we can identify 12 principles and standards for ethical supply chain management conduct or supply management conduct in uh, this slide, and the next two slides actually is the list of these principles and standards. This slide shows three of them, which is to avoid the intent and appearance of unethical or uh, compromising practice in relationships, actions, and communications. Demonstrate loyalty to the employer by diligently following the lawful instructions of the employer, using reasonable care and granted authority. Avoid any personal, business, or professional activity that would create a conflict between personal and interests and the interests of the employer. And I will let you go over the next two slides with the rest of the principles and standards for ethical supply management conduct. Once we have independent organizations, significant management issues will appear that might affect the ability to control and manage the supply chain, such as the mutual agreement on goals. Whatever company will agree on, the other company will not agree on. The trust between the two partners or the two companies or the rest of the companies, the whole supply chain, and um, have different or having different organizational cultures. With product development and with today's market, uh, having lots of vendors for the same product makes us wonder how can we select the vendor, especially now you are trying to produce your product, the final product for the semester, and you would like to see what kind or who are the proper vendor that can supply the material and the um maybe equipment that can provide the efficient line of production. From all these vendors, to select the right vendor, we need first to find potential vendors that can provide us with the material. Then determine the likelihood of them becoming good vendors. Uh, Not only that they have the material, but would they supply it in time? Do they have good quality? And that's when we determine, good vendor. Actually, um, there are certain criteria that we need to identify. So the selected vendor will be integrated within the supply chain. Now, a vendor development process will be applied, which might include training, providing help with engineering and production to make sure of the quality and the product specifications. And vendor development will include also establishing policies and procedures. So I have certain criteria that will determine which vendor is a good vendor. And based on those criteria that I created, then I select the vendor. Once I select the vendor, I will integrate that vendor within the supply chain. But maybe the vendor is a small business that cannot actually improve the processes within. So what we can do as a bigger organization, we can assist the vendor in improving their processes by providing training, help, engineering, production, design, whatever they need to improve the product that I need. And then with those trainings or those development, we will include some kind of policies and procedures that will establish how to learn or how to deal with the vendor to improve vendor uh, practices. Vendor selection might be through negotiation based on cost model, where supplier opens a book to purchaser. In this case, they have to accept that um, the buyer or the organization will look at their records to be able to purchase the uh, item that they produce. Or it might be based on market models such as auction or indexed price. Also, it can be based on competitive bidding, which is used for infrequent purchases. Most of the time, you will see a bigger organization sending a request for information or a request for quote, and those information or those quotes will be provided for the company, maybe from 10 vendors or 15 vendors, and then they will select 5, and from the 5 they will perform interviews and material demonstration, and from those 5 or whatever the number is, the competitors, 5 or 3, they will select only one vendor that will provide them with the good quality, efficiency, and reliable uh, product line. Uh, Again, we said that we need certain criteria to assess the vendor or to know that this is a good vendor. So what are the criteria? To evaluate a vendor, we can use the following criteria. First of all, we have engineering, research, innovation skills. Do they have that? Are they innovative? Do they have innovation in their company? Do they have research in their company? And we can give that a weight and a score based on the importance of that part for our organization. Production process capability, their flexibility, technical assistance, the distribution and delivery capabilities, the quality systems and performance, facilities location, if they are nearby or far, financial and managerial strength, stability, and cost structure. You don't want them to bankrupt in the middle of the supply. Information system capabilities. Do they have an ERP system, e-procurement? Are they able to provide the material in time? So if they don't have an automated system and they are doing everything manual, maybe that will take more time and the efficiency will be less than a system that has everything automated and everything digitized, faster electronic email and so on. So they have the capabilities and the communication skills to provide the items within the proper time. The integrity of the vendor, looking for environmental compliance, ethics. They respect the environment, and they have a product that can be recyclable. All these are criteria that can actually affect vendor evaluation or vendor selection. Now, not to mention that some companies will look at the cost. Some companies would look at the cost, and if the cost is one of the issues, then it has to be included in the criteria. And again, the weights will be different from one organization to another. If you are more interested in a company that will provide you with the engineering and research and innovation skills, then you will increase the weight for that item in the criteria. And of course, the vendor with the highest score will be selected as one of the vendors, and sometimes they choose more than vendor just as a backup and support for their product supplies. The objective of the logistics is to obtain efficient operations through the integration of all material acquisition, movement, and storage activities. I need to move stuff from one place to another, so I need to manage that. And to manage that, I have to have efficient operations. The logistics is a frequent candidate for outsourcing, which allows competitive advantage to be gained through reduced cost and improved customer service. If I don't have the capabilities of moving stuff from one place to another, then I can outsource it to a company that is specialized in transportation and moving material, such as FedEx, UPS, or USPS. So it depends on what do I need to do or to move, and based on that, I can develop a partnership between the organization and the transportation or logistics company. Uh, the distribution systems that are used in logistics are trucking, railroads, air freights, waterways, and pipelines. Trucking moves the vast majority of manufactured goods, and the main advantage of trucking, the flexibility. The truck can leave when the shipment is ready. They don't have to wait for other vendors to come. While the railroad, uh, they have the ability to carry large loads, but they have to wait for all companies to bring their stuff to start moving and to ship the whole amount together. Um, Although they can ship large loads, but they are still controlled by the size of the containers that they move. And to solve this issue, railroads started using piggybacking or double-decker, where they can put two containers above each other, and that will make or that will provide bigger space utilization. For the air freight, it's flexible uh, and it's fast, but it cannot be used for everything. It can be used for perishable items, uh, but that will reflect on those items and will make them more expensive. Waterways are typically used for bulky, low-value cargo, used when shipping cost is more important, and also it's used when um, uh, it's cheaper or compared to the air freight is cheaper. Maybe it's lower than air freight, but if I'm not in a hurry to ship, then I can use this way of shipping instead of air freight or other way of shipping. Although some gas or oil being transported through trucks, there are or there was a need for a way to transport fluids in large amounts and continuous basis. For this, pipelines are used for transportation. They are used to transport oil, gas, and other chemical products from one place to another, and they will minimize the cost of using trucks, over the years because that will be an initial cost. It will break even at a certain point, and then it can be utilized over many years. Outsourcing logistics to a third party can reduce cost and improve delivery reliability and speed. The third-party mission will be to deliver in time with the lowest cost, and many companies can compete to manage the logistics in the supply chain and get the lowest cost. The third party can coordinate supplier inventory with delivery services. It might be also able to provide warehousing, assembly, testing, and shipping. During shipping, the product in transit is considered as a form of inventory and has carrying costs associated with it. As been said before, faster shipping will cost more than slower shipping. There are trade-offs in choosing which route to go. An evaluation can be done for the two costs to understand the trade-offs. So if it's cheaper to actually ship it via airplane than shipping it through railroad, then that will be the choice to do it. This is an example that will show how we calculate the cost for different alternatives. So for example, if we have a product with a value of $1,750, the holding cost is 40%. So if the total cost per year, uh, actually it's 40% of the total cost per year. The holding cost is 40% of the total cost per year. So if I use a second carrier, it will be 1 day faster and $20 more. Uh, First, we calculate the daily cost of holding the product by multiplying the annual holding cost by product value and divide that by 365 days in a year, which will be equal to $1.92. And that is way cheaper than faster shipping. So it's fine with us to go with slower shipping. Logistics are becoming easier, secured, and just in time because of the policies and agreements between the countries that made the border more open. In today's market, monitoring and controlling stock moving through supply chains is more important than ever. And new technologies are being developed to allow close monitoring of location, storage, conditions, and movements such as the RFID, or what we call the radio frequency ID, and the GPS systems. Those can track shipment from the time it leaves the supplier until it's in the hands of the end user. Those are digital devices that can be utilized to track the item, to receive it, and even store it on the shelf. By doing that, you will know exactly what do you have exactly in the store. Um, the RFID actually being enforced now by Walmart to all their vendors, so it will assist in the ERP system that they are using in their organization. How can we measure the supply chain performance? To measure the supply chain performance, we can look at the following factors. Lead time, and we can use weeks as a unit for that. As you can see here, the average is 15 days, while the benchmark is um, uh, 8 weeks, and the average is 15 weeks. So it's not days, it's weeks. Time spent placing an order, the average is 42 minutes, while the benchmark is 15 minutes. Percentage of late deliveries, the average is 33%, while the benchmark is 2%. Percentage of rejected material, the average is 1.5%, while the benchmark is 0.0001%. Number of shortages per year, the average is 400, while the benchmark is 4. So the closer your organization to the benchmark, or the closer your supply chain to the benchmark, the better your supply chain is. And those benchmarks based on some of the firms that actually have efficiency in moving material and producing and providing the market with the proper material just in time. We can also use assets committed to inventory to measure supply chain performance, where we have the number that we can get to be or to compare to the average percentage in such industry, and the lower the better. For example, let us assume that we have investment in inventory $11.4 billion. The total assets is $44.4 billion. Then the percentage, or the percent invested in inventory, is equal to total inventory investment, which is $11.4 billion, divided by total assets, which is $44.4 billion, all multiplied by 100, which is 25.7%. So if we are talking about manufacturing, the average is 20%. That means we need to improve our supply chain and minimize inventory level. If it was 19%, then we are better than the benchmark. So we always look at those benchmarks and compare our organization with whatever is available as a benchmark and decide if the performance of the supply chain is good or not. This table lists the average for certain industries and gives some examples for high-performance supply chains such as Toyota, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, and Home Depot. And you can see the inventory as a percentage of total assets, how it's being compared. So you can see that Toyota is 5% in manufacturing, Coca-Cola 2.9% in wholesale, McDonald's 0.05% in restaurants, and Home Depot is 25.7% in retail. Also, we can measure supply chain performance through inventory turnover, which can be calculated by dividing cost of goods sold by inventory investment. This table lists some example of annual inventory turnover in different industries. Example, the table here shows the annual report for Pepsi Cola that determines the turnover and weeks of inventory. The numbers shown are in billions of dollars. So the net revenue is 32.5 billion. Cost of goods sold is 14.2 billion. The inventory, the raw material, is 0.74 billion. Work in process inventory 0.11 billion. Finished goods inventory is 0.84 billion, and the total inventory investment is 1.69 billion dollars. We said to calculate the inventory turnover, we need to divide the cost of goods sold by inventory investment, and that's 14.2 divided by 1.69. In this case, it will equal to 8.4. To calculate weeks of inventory, we first find average weekly cost of goods sold, and then we divide that by the inventory investment by the average weekly cost of goods sold. In this case, it will be 1.69 divided by 0.273, which is equal to 6.19 weeks. Making sure that your supply chain is performing excellent is a competitive advantage in a very challenging economy. Um, so looking at this number, you know how to um, uh, measure the performance of the supply chain. Did you select the proper supply chain or supplier? And if you are keeping lots of inventory, that will affect your supply chain performance. That will be all for this session. If you have any questions, please email it to me or post it in the discussion area. Thank you and have a great day.